News Corp Chief Executive Robert Thompson says digital giants like Facebook and Google should be subject to Australian regulation. Mr Thompson was speaking to the Senate hearing on media diversity, where he said big tech companies were publishers and should be subject to the same rules as other media outlets. Jonathan Lee reports.
Australia's media diversity is back in the spotlight.
The issues with which you grapple are profound. They are fundamental, not incremental.
Robert Thompson is the most senior News Corp executive to appear at the Senate media inquiry, following earlier appearances by News Corp Australasia Executive Chairman Michael Miller and Sky News Australia Chief Executive Paul Whittaker, bringing with him a message about the role of big tech.
There has been a significant shift in power, influence and profitability from the creators of news content to the distributors of news content.
Those distributors, like Google and Facebook, have been under the microscope in recent years, criticised for the power they yield when it comes to news media. News Corp and several other media organisations reached payment for content deals earlier this year in response to the Morrison government's media bargaining code. Mr Thompson says there's a further conversation to be had.
We are at last starting to have a more sophisticated debate about the impact of social media and the potency of digital platforms,
including about how to better regulate those platforms.
If people have a complaint about an article and there needs to be accountability with a newspaper, there are so many routes by which we can be held accountable. Unfortunately, that's not yet the case for the big digital platforms.
Do you believe that they should be within the same regulatory framework in terms of ACMA that you are?
So I think if anybody operates in Australia to play a role as a content provider or to make money, that should be subject to Australian jurisdiction. So the issue is not diversity, it's consistency.
He did, though, address the importance of diversity within News Corp.
That diversity echoes through the company, across News Corp, across the globe. There are contrasting concepts, diverging views, a contest party.
Citing the differing views of publications in the United Kingdom on major issues like Brexit. But for Australia's senators, the focus was firmly on climate, following the company's recent Mission Zero series.
How do we explain editorial independence when every newspaper in the country owned by News Corp carried the same 16-page wraparound in relation to climate?
I presume that the situation in each of the states is different. I presume as you get into the texture of the coverage, when the situation in Queensland is different to that in Melbourne different to Sydney, the demands, the imperatives of those audiences are different. I would be surprised if there was no divergence in the texture of that coverage.
He says the upcoming global Glasgow Climate Summit has proved an opportunity to concentrate thinking.
To be clear, the initiative came from the local editors. It is important that there be rational responses to challenges.
The committee continues.